How do you feel about the direction of Canada today? How are we feeling? I posted quite a few videos talking about the direction that Prime Minister Carney is taking Canada. And everybody seems to say, Leo, relax. Nothing's going to happen. We're fine. Nothing's changing. We're perfect. Canada's perfect. Right? Do you believe that? I believe the people that say Canada is perfect today are the ones watching the mainstream media. The people that say Canada is perfect today are the people that voted for the Liberals. Can we really afford another 10 years of Liberals? Can we afford another 452 conflicts of interest by Prime Minister Carney so far? And by the way, the deal with China, the 49,000 vehicles, 60,000 vehicles the following year from China, who's building the batteries for those cars? And did that company just get a $5 billion tax break? And who owns a lot of shares in that company? You're right. And if this is number 452 conflicts of interest of selling out Canada, what's next? Because Mr. Carney is just getting started, right? It's his first year. He's just starting. He's just warming up. So what else is down the line for us? I would like you to watch this video produced quite a few years ago, predicting what's going to happen 10 years from today. And guess where we are today? Watch the video. I would love to hear your comments below. We'll talk again soon. Take care.
If you told the average Canadian 10 years ago, within a decade, 2/3 of the country would be living paycheck to paycheck, forced to choose between heating their homes and buying groceries, they'd have laughed in your face. That skilled workers earning six-figure salaries would struggle to pay rent. That the healthcare system would all but collapse, with 24,000 Canadians dying waiting for surgeries or diagnostic tests in the past year. That massive tent cities with hordes of drug-addled homeless would spring up in every major city. But that's exactly what happened. While it might sound sensational, the past decade has been a total collapse of what was once considered one of the best countries in the world to live in. Between chronic economic mismanagement, the complete failure to integrate mass waves of low-scale immigration, and corporate cartels consolidating ever greater power, the average Canadian has had their status reduced to that of a medieval vassal, earning just enough to put bread on the table with nothing left over for the future. The Canada you grew up in is dead. Crushed by rising public and private debt, resource underutilization, non-functional healthcare and housing, and an ever-widening gap between a small elite and an increasingly impoverished population, the new Canada is rapidly becoming a third world backwater. So how did we get to this disastrous place? Where does this trajectory lead if the trend continues? And what, if anything, can still be done to salvage what remains? To illustrate the severity of the current situation, consider the following. Canadians are now one of the most indebted populations in the world. As of 2025, Canada's household debt-to-income ratio, which compares total household debt to its aggregate after-tax income, was 177%. Put simply, Canadians owe $1.77 for every dollar they earn. This is the third highest ratio in the world, meaning Canadians are spending an alarming portion of their income paying off credit cards, mortgages, and bank loans, leaving little to nothing for emergencies, savings, education, and other necessities. To put this in perspective, by late 2025, the Americans had a debt-to-income ratio of just 81%, less than half of Canadians. Even more troubling, this is a relatively recent phenomenon. Through the 1970s, 80s, 90s, and early 2000s, Canadian and American debt ratios closely mirrored one another. That all changed after the 2008 financial crisis. While the US underwent a violent market collapse with mass foreclosures, widespread bankruptcies, and enormous debt write-offs, Canada did not. While there was a brief downturn, housing prices quickly resumed their meteoric rise, with successive governments doubling down on housing as the engine for economic growth. In other words, Canada never went through the painful deleveraging the US did, We never learned the lessons of the mortgage crisis because we never had to, and we're paying the price for that now. As of late 2025, having avoided 2 consecutive quarters of GDP contraction, Canada's economy is not technically in recession. Technically. It's important to note that federal leaders and their investor class cronies accomplished this through record levels of immigration, used to prop up housing demand and inflate aggregate economic output. This boosted the overall GDP, but came at the expense of the metric that really matters, GDP per capita. That ratio has dropped for 5 of the past 7 quarters and now sits at 2.5% below pre-pandemic levels. And Canadians are feeling it. A recent H&R Block survey revealed a shocking 85% of Canadians say living paycheck to paycheck is now the norm, up from 60% just 1 year ago. And the reality on the ground reflects this. Walk through downtown Toronto or Vancouver and you'll see endless empty storefronts, lineups around the block for minimum wage McDonald's and Tim Hortons jobs, the usual smiling Remax agent ads on buses and trains, swapped out for payday loans, cash for gold, and debt restructuring services. According to a 2024 Food Banks Canada report, roughly 10 million Canadians, about 1/4 of the population, are now living in poverty, unable to afford essentials like heating their homes, internet access, adequate daily protein, new clothes, or dental care. For context, in 2024, Mexico's poverty rate was 29.6%, Brazil's was 23.1%, and Moldova's was 27.5%. All countries widely classified as third world or developing economies, if you prefer. Food bank usage further underscores this trend. It's more than doubled since 2019, with 33% of users being children, 19% employed Canadians, and over 8% seniors. Unemployment paints a similar grisly picture. Canada's overall unemployment rate is fluctuating around 7%, placing it among the highest in the OECD. And that figure is generous. It counts part-time and gig work as employment, masking the true underemployment issue. But the real story here is youth unemployment, hovering at around 14%, a 15-year high. Much of this is the direct result of the massive expansion of the temporary foreign worker and international student programs, flooding the labor market with millions of low-skill workers and displacing the entry-level jobs normally filled by high school and college kids. But poverty, food banks, and unemployment aren't the cause of Canada's decline. They're merely the symptoms. At the core of Canada's economic stagnation is an uncomfortable fact. The country has regulated itself into paralysis. Investment doesn't flee countries because of a lack of resources. It flees because the rules make building anything impossible. Here are just a few of the major oil and gas projects cancelled over the past decade. Energy East, worth $15.7 billion, a proposed pipeline to transport crude oil from Alberta to New Brunswick, cancelled in 2017 due to regulatory delays and significant opposition in Quebec. Northern Gateway, worth $7.9 billion, an Enbridge project to move oil from Alberta to the BC coast. Its permits were revoked by the federal government in 2016 following concerns over spills and Indigenous rights. Tech Frontier Oil Sands, $20.6 billion. A massive bitumen mining project in northern Alberta, scrapped by Teck Resources in 2020, citing unresolved federal environmental policies. In total, the cumulative value of all scrapped resource projects since 2015 is an eye-watering $670 billion. Had these projects succeeded, conservative estimates suggest they would have added over $1 trillion to GDP, created 400,000 to 600,000 highly paying skilled jobs, and generated enough tax revenue to eliminate the federal deficit for much of the period. It's as if Canada is an energy superpower that wants to put itself out of business. You can either develop your energy resources to achieve widespread economic prosperity, or you could be a preening, preachy, moral do-gooder lecturing the world about climate change, carbon neutrality, and net zero. But you can't do both. Canada's web of provincial rules, standards, and permitting requirements is so complex that it functions like a system of internal trade barriers. According to the IMF, these barriers impose the equivalent of a 21% internal tariff on goods and services moving within the country. No other developing economy tolerates such an inefficient internal market. Further evidence that Canada's economic decline is no accident. It's the result of pure incompetence. Finally, perhaps the most troubling sign of Canada's new normal is the absolute explosion in homelessness. Just a few years ago, seeing tents pitched in parks or vacant lots was a rarity. Today, entire shanty towns seem to have popped up overnight. And with homelessness comes theft, assault, rampant drug use, filth, disease, and despair, all of which spreads into the surrounding community. The official homeless population has doubled over the past 6 years, with nearly 60,000 experiencing homelessness on any given night. But that figure drastically understates the reality. These counts exclude the so-called hidden homeless, people sleeping in cars, motels, couch surfing, and the like. When included, this number jumps to roughly 300,000 people nationwide. A jarring figure. Canada's homeless population is projected to double again over the next 6 years, to between 550 and 570,000 people. Roaming hordes of fentanyl-induced zombies will become permanent fixtures in Canadian cities. While not a problem limited to developing countries, the squalor, tent cities, crime, and open drug use are certainly reminiscent of dysfunctional third world nations, perfectly content with the progressive disintegration of Canadian society. Let's hope Canadians realize it didn't have to be this way, that the third worlding of Canada was entirely self-inflicted, and that the process can still be reversed, if only people wake the hell up.